Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, in fabulous Las Vegas at the beautiful, opulent, exquisite Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino. This from what is rumored to be the last year that the WSOP will be held here. And I'm not alone. I am in the hotel room of a TPE legend, one of our biggest all-time success stories, bracelet winner Carlos Welch. Carlos, how are you?
I'm good, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me up to your room. This is nice. You know, I mean, I heard you when we talked a while back over Skype, and you were telling me, you know, you like your digs at the Rio. This isn't bad at all.
Yeah, it's not bad. At the time we were having that conversation, I was in a Super 8 in Barstow. So this is a major upgrade from that location.
You got your Wyndham hotel points and you got your Diamond card, so you don't have to pay the resort fees anymore. Go back and listen to that last episode. I don't know what that was. Maybe like in June or July.
May.
It was in May.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, back in May we spoke with Carlos, and he was giving you guys some Knitcast approved tips on how to save money on the resort fees here in Vegas, which are exorbitant to say the least.
Yes, I had to go through purgatory to get to heaven. So now I'm here and I'm enjoying it.
It's the Super 8, and then you won your bracelet, and you're moving on up to the Rio. So no one here can get used to saying any word other than summer, so I'm not even going to try anymore.
Yeah.
How's your summer going so far?
Great. I played 2 live events. I played the 1K shootout, 1K freeze out, and then also the 500 freeze out. Made it to right after dinner break in both, and I say great because I've only lost 1,500. Most people I know are down much more than that. I didn't really enjoy the tournaments as much but people know I don't really like live poker anyway. But just all the stuff I've had opportunity to do outside of playing has made the summer great. Hanging out with my friends here in the room. They're playing the senior event right now, and so getting a chance to rail them when they go deep. My roommate made day 2 of the senior event at the Win yesterday, so got a chance to rail a little bit of that.
That's cool.
Yeah. Got a chance to rail Jeff Platt last night at his final table. Railed Scott Ball at his 5K 6 max bracelet win. So I'm enjoying this summer more so as a poker buddy than I am a player, and I prefer that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you got your bracelet already. Now it's time to root for your friends. I want to be clear. We're recording this on October 27th, which is a Wednesday in the fall. But because we're at the Rio and we're playing World Series of Poker, everyone keeps slipping and saying, how's your summer going? How's your summer? So I've just decided to embrace it. It's an extended summer.
That's a good idea. Yeah, and we'll be doing it again in a couple of months.
I know. Yeah, next year's World Series, allegedly, rumored to be beginning like at the end of May, like it always did in the past. So, and from what I hear, it's going to be at my favorite place, Bally's.
Yeah. So make sure you double check your doors, guys. Next year, make sure you lock them twice. Maybe bring a padlock with you if you need to.
A police lock or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to take extra precautions. I mean, I think I might play it at Bally's, but I'm sure I'll never stay there again.
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to being on the Strip, to be honest. Just even dealing with the Win, there was a decent amount of there's like construction at like weird like primetime hours. Like, why would you do construction on the Las Vegas Strip, at like 6 p.m.?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, so I'm just dreading more experiences like that next year when every event is on the Strip. So I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, so if the WSOP is at Bally's, and then, of course, across the street at Aria, they're sure to have something going on. Venetian and Wynn, like all of us are going to be on the strip full time. It's going to be, you won't be able to get away from the poker players unless you come back over here to the Rio, where there will be basically nothing happening at all.
Yeah, I'll probably be staying here.
In your all suite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I want to give you a shout out because I think I got some Carlos run good. I ran into you on my way to play day one of the $1,500 shootout bracelet event. And I saw you with two of your friends, and you introduced me to some of your friends. And I said, you asked me if I have any cashes yet. And I said, no, I played a few events, but nothing to write home about, no cashes. I said, but I have a good feeling about the shootout. And you said, good luck. And sure enough, and you shook my hand, and I swear, man, that's the only reason I cashed in that tournament. I made it to day two and got halfway through my table on day two as well. So I give you full credit for that.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's nice to finally break the ice. I had played, I think, 7 or 8 events with no cashes. So after a while, you start to think, am I not good at this anymore?
It's pretty sick. It's an 800 player field, and you got 11th place money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also 79th place money. Yeah. Yeah. It was, we were talking before we started recording here, and I decided, we should talk about this, on the podcast. What are your views on shootouts? Have you ever played one?
I did. I played it. I don't remember what year it was now, but I played it once, the 1500 shootout. My first table seemed pretty good. The only player I recognized was Adam Levy, aka Ruthless, was on my right. But I think he was one of the first players out, and I was out, not much long after him. But I originally thought that this would be a great tournament for me because of my sit and go background. It's like, I think I pretty much have the skill set for this. And I kind of went with that narrative for a long time. But then I think it was Andrew or maybe somebody else I talked to recently that said it's actually not a sit and go because there's no payout structure. It's a winner take all. And in that sense, it's more like a cash game, which is like the complete opposite of my wheelhouse. Not only is cash itself the opposite of my wheelhouse, but it goes from full ring cash to 6 max cash to heads up cash, which I have to be. I don't think I've ever played heads up cash, so I would have to be a massive fish out of water in that format. So I think in the future I may not play this, given that it's not actually a sit and go. It's more like a cash game that devolves into a heads up cash game. So it just may not be good for my skill set.
I understand what you're saying. Now, for me, as anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows, I think all tournaments should be winner take all.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that all that matters is first place. I don't have to think about ICM, because that's what's not my wheelhouse. I openly admit that I haven't studied ICM as much as I should have. And even when I do study it and learn about how I'm supposed to play, it's just impossible for me to change my mentality because I want to win. I always want first. And, the great thing about the shootout format is it rewards the go for it style of play that comes so naturally to me. So I've played in 4 or 5 total shootouts in my whole career. So it's not like I'm a shootout expert or something like that. And this is the first time I ever cashed in one. So, but yeah, I like the idea that you don't have to worry about the payout structure. I like ignoring all that ICM stuff and just going for broke. Now, I want to get to your stuff, but I want to also, I know people wanted to hear a little bit about my my shootout. Yeah, so day one, I got a pretty good table draw. There was one player at my table that I thought was really good. There was a little guy, he was speaking French, so he could have been French or Belgian. But when I say little, this guy was probably like 110 pounds.
Wow.
And a lot of French photographers or Belgian photographers were taking pictures of him. So he was obviously somebody.
That's never good.
But I didn't know him. Like all these, there's a lot of interest in how he was doing on day one of the 1500 shootout.
Yeah.
So he must be somebody, at least back in his country. I ended up busting him. He had pocket kings. Well, he had raised, and I had 3-bet him a couple of times already. And so this time I 3-bet him again. He's on the cutoff. I'm on the button. I have ace 10. He's got like 20 big blinds or something. And I decided I was going to 3-bet and go with it because he's got to be getting sick of me. Right. And so I thought he might 4-bet light shove, just because he can't keep raise folding to me all day.
Right.
And this time, of course, he had the kings. And my ace 10, the flop was ace 10, 10. So,
Wow.
so that's when I knew I had a chance. And that was pretty early on that first table. But once I got rid of him, the rest of the table was pretty soft except for my eventual heads-up opponent, who was a guy named Alex from Russia. I don't know if he's listening, but Alex, you are so tough. Our heads-up was, I think, the longest one. Our tournament didn't end last, but we got heads-up relatively early, and we ended up playing heads-up for almost 4 hours. It was 3 hours and 45 minutes of heads-up.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, we played another couple hours after the dinner break. And I was like, man, this is never going to end. Like, we were heads up already before the dinner break, and we come back after dinner, and we just kept, going back and forth and back and forth. And he's one of these guys that, like, has an Apple Watch, so you have to touch your watch to see what time it is.
Yeah.
And so if he had a close decision, he always looked at his watch. So I know he was trying to do some kind of GTO randomization.
Never good.
That's not a good sign, man, because I'm not that sharp, and I don't know. I mean, so I'm like, I just hope his watch tells him to do what I want him to do right now. And to be fair, I ran really good against him over the last 8 or 10 hands that we played, where he had the chip lead, and then I just couldn't lose.
Right.
If I needed a 4, I flopped a 4. If I needed a jack, I flopped a jack. Honestly, heads up battles often turn out to be whoever's running better, is going to win. Yeah, especially if it's not like 1,000 hands or something.
So did you guys basically just get, ground down by the blinds, or was there a big hand that kind of caused the shift at the end?
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty, even in stacks for a long time. So we had, 40 or 50 big blinds each for quite a while.
Yeah.
And the blind structure was really good. I mean, it was going up super slowly. So there was no, like, he had aces, I had kings, we got all in nothing like that happened. But when things started moving my way, it was like I had like a queen 8, and the flop came 8-8 deuce. And I checked, and he bet, and I called, and I checked, and he checked, and I checked, and then he bet the river, and I raised him. And he called because he finally made a pair, and I'm capable of doing that without a pair, And I just keep turning over the nuts on the poor guy. It's like, honestly, I don't know if I could have won the battle if I didn't have better cards, because he's probably better at heads up than I am, just based on the Apple Watch alone.
Yeah. The fact that you didn't show up with an Apple Watch, you're already at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Now there's other ways to randomize, but this is the one I see all these tough guys using, and I just, I'm not in that world. I don't pay $1,000 for a watch ever. So so that was cool. And then I was real excited to play day 2, and I'm thinking all I have to do is win another table, and then I'll be at the final table, my first WSOP final table. I got 15th in a tournament that had like 6,000 players once. I have a couple of, as everybody knows, a couple of deep runs in the main, but I've never actually played a final table at the WSOP. So I was excited to do that. And I was like, all I got to do is beat whoever these, the 7 scrubs they're going to put me with. And so then the night before,
it wasn't even full table.
No, it's only 8 players. Yeah.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, this is going to be great, because all I got to do is beat 7 more players, and I'm just going to get there. So I look, and I was going to be in seat 7, and in seat 6, no big deal, just future Hall of Famer Joseph Chong with his $15 million in lifetime cashes, no big deal.
Yeah.
And then on my left, some guy from Colorado, and on his left, Sam Grafton.
Yeah.
So,
Not the best table draw. that 7 people in your way just kind of feels like 70 now.
And you know what? We were talking a minute ago about this whole idea of the go for it style.
Yeah.
Sam Grafton showed up with all the weapons. I mean, he was trying to win every pot from the beginning of the tournament. Now, I think he took it too far, because he was taking chances that didn't make a lot of sense. But he won like 5 of the first 6 hands and just never slowed down. He was trying to win all the chips at once. And it kind of proved like that's not how he normally plays. I mean, he's not known for being nitty by any stretch, but he was trying to win the tournament on the first 10 hands.
Right. He probably, we don't know who the other players were, but out of the 3 of you, he had the best position. So maybe he decided, like, I'm going to take advantage of that, So sounds like it started out maybe working for him, but kind of like, hit a roadblock at some point.
Yeah, I mean, well, basically the eventual winner was Johan, and I apologize, a shoemaker. Mm-hmm. He's from Belgium, and he's already got 2 bracelets. They're going to play the final table today as we record this on Wednesday. So possibly he'll have his second bracelet of the fall / summer.
Now, did you know this ahead of time? Well, actually, you know what? Day 2 table, you can actually do research.
Yeah. I did all my research the night before, and that made it hard to go to sleep. I was like, because I played with Chung before, and he is no joke. I mean, he's a killer. I believe he'll end up in the Hall of Fame someday. He's one of the best players I've ever seen.
Right.
And very much fearless.
Right.
I asked him, I ended up busting him out, and I said, I apologize for the terrible timing because I just busted you out of the tournament, but would you do my podcast sometime?
Yeah.
But Joseph Chung doesn't care about $1,500. He's not crying about, not making day 3 of this thing. So he's very gracious, and he did. The listeners will be happy to know he's agreed to come on. We just have to figure out a time this quote unquote summer to schedule that.
You got to figure out the one day this year he's not playing.
He's not playing 3 events. Yeah. I mean, as soon as he busted, he was saying he was going to jump into something else. So, I mean, these guys come here to grind heavy. So, but if I can catch him on a day off or a day when he busts out of something where he doesn't have anything else scheduled, I believe we can make that happen. I'd say there's about a 50% chance this ends up happening, which to me, that would be quite a treat because I just respect his game so much. And one thing I noticed, I played with him at 2 other tables before in my career, and in both of those tables, he had position on me and was extremely loose and extremely aggressive. At this table, maybe because he has me and Sam on his left, he was really tight, especially early. I mean, I couldn't believe how much he was staying out of it, even like giving me a walk one time in the blinds, which I did not expect at all because, I think that me being in position against him, he still has a huge advantage over me, even out of position because he's just that good. But I learned a lot just from watching how he approached it and, just waiting for the right spots. And then when he started getting short, of course, he had to take more chances because there's no prize for second place at this table. You've got to get all those chips. And now this Belgian guy just busted Sam, and now he's doubled up early. And so, it's funny, though, because these are the 2 guys I was most afraid of. And the bust outs went Sam and then Joseph.
Yeah.
Did
the same guy bust them both?
No, I busted Joseph.
Oh,
and Johan had busted busted Sam.
So when you when those 2 guys are out, are you kind of like thinking like, okay, now it's like my chance? And
I mean, I was.
Got the bracelet with it.
I was, but I mean, by then I had identified Johan as being obviously really skillful player,
right.
And there was also a guy from Brazil that ended up heads up with Johan to see which of the 2 of them would make the final table. Yeah. And they had an eternal heads up battle last night that Johan eventually prevailed in. But other than that, the rest of my table, I felt based on Hendon Mob and just watching them play and listening to the things they were saying, were actually amateurs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a sense, that's a good sign that, 4 out of 8 players on a day 2 of a shootout had won their day 1 table. They were amateurs.
Right.
So that to me, I don't know. Am I supposed to say Rex or amateur? I don't know. I don't mean to offend anyone, but I just mean like these guys don't play full time. You can tell.
Right. Yeah, that's actually surprising given that, of course, each one of them just beat a table full of players. So you think the cream would rise to the top, but sometimes you do get a few amateurs. I'm just surprised there were that many.
Yeah, half of my day 2. So half of it was really tough, and the other half I felt like I had a distinct skill edge over. Like, for example, the seat to my left between me and Sam was actually unoccupied for about the first half hour of day 2. And I'm like, who is this guy? I Googled him. He has no results. He's from Colorado. You have no information about this guy at all, and he's the one who's late.
Yeah.
You expect the amateurs to come like 2 hours early and sit there and try to get ready, right? And he comes in, and all I smell is marijuana.
Oh my God!
Right on brand.
The guy from Colorado.
All right, so the stoner dude's half an hour late, and he smells like he's been smoking all morning. So that was that was kind of one of the highlights for me. I was like giggling to myself. I was like, all right, so you're not breaking any of the stereotypes I had in mind about Colorado. Yeah. But it was fun. I went for broke. By the time I busted Joseph Chung, I had an average stack with 5 players left. No, six players left, including me. So I was right in the mix, and I made what I think was a really good 3-barrel bluff against the Brazilian guy. And I mean, he had a bluff catcher that I think almost none of us would have called holding, but he found the call button, and he just got to hand it to him. He got half my stack there, and now I have half an average stack all of a sudden, and I could never get back into contention, really. I intend to go over that hand in graphic detail in a future episode, but first, for this episode, I want to hear what you've been up to and what you've been playing. That's my quick recap of my shootout, which is really the highlight so far of my summer. Of course, I always save all my run good for the main event.
Yeah. Smart.
So why spend it all on a $1,500 shootout with the first prize is only $200,000? I'm trying for millions.
Yeah. So as far as what I've been doing today, I've been, and I screwed this up, but I've been planning this joke all day. I was going to, when we started the podcast, I was going to interrupt you and say that, I forgot, Clayton, something came up. I'm going to have to cancel on you last minute. But I completely whiffed that joke.
Well, it still made me laugh even after the fact. Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks in a row, I have interviews scheduled with poker players, and they just flake on me. So I was like, I know Carlos will be there.
Yeah. And then I thought about that. So last night, I was picking up my buddy from the airport when you text me. And immediately after getting back in, we went to sleep. And then we went for a walk this morning. And then I came back and I saw my phone and I saw the text from you. And I was like, oh, Clayton's going to think that I stood him up too. Because he texted me last night and I didn't respond until late this morning.
No. To be clear, standing somebody up means you have an appointment.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, you could just blow me off. That's different. I'm used to that.
Yeah.
But when you say you're going to be there, just be there.
Yeah. That's not good, guys. Make sure you stick to your appointments.
Yeah, I mean, my time is valuable too, right?
Exactly. Besides that, I initially wanted to play the shootout, and I planned to play it, but I got a last minute request to finish up part 2 of a review that I did for pokercoaching.com of my bracelet win from the real summer, a couple months ago, with Bert Stevens, whose screen name is Garaf Granger.
Yeah.
Garaf Granger.
Yeah, we know him. He's a killer.
Yeah, I just don't know how to pronounce that screen. I'm not sure. Sometimes I say giraffe, then I say Garaf, but you pretty much know, if you know anything about online high stakes poker over the past decade, you know who this guy is. So
tell us about that video. Are you guys going over your hands together?
Yes. So he heard me on a podcast, maybe this one, and kind of liked my story. And so he offered to review the bracelet win with me for pokercoaching.com, Jonathan Little's site. And we did part 1 a couple weeks ago, and I say in Vegas as if I did it in Vegas. I left Vegas and I came back, and in my mind, feels like I did it in 2 separate places. Well, the first time we did it, I was parked in the IKEA parking lot doing it from my car
in Vegas.
Okay. Yes, and then I went to substitute in Portland, and then I came back to Vegas, and now we did it from a hotel room. And in my mind, it feels like 2 completely different places. But we're just going over all the hands, and he's telling me the things I did correctly, the things I did incorrectly, and he's really pointed out some pretty big leaks in my game that I didn't realize I had.
Oh, you got to give me one. Like, what have you learned from him?
The biggest thing I learned was I do too much. I try to induce bluffs from aggressive players too often. And the reason this is a mistake is because I generally play on ignition where the aggressive players are maniacs. Right. They're like always aggressive. So inducing aggression from those guys are great. But one thing I saw in this bracelet event is that the aggressive players I'm playing against here aren't maniacs. They're using selective aggression. So when I take a line that basically screams that, hey, I have a bluff catcher, good aggressive players aren't going to bluff at that point, where the maniacs that I'm used to playing against are.
Right. So your little tricks from ignition didn't work in the bracelet event.
Yeah, I can't induce these people I can't induce them to bluff in spots where I clearly have a bluff catcher like I can on ignition. So one thing that he pointed out to me, I would take a line where I would bet. So maybe I open, big blind defends. I would bet the flop. They would call, and then the turn, I hit like a pair on the turn, but it's basically a bluff catcher. And what I'll do often on ignition is check back the turn so that the guy will lead into me on the river. But what he pointed out to me is you open and say we got like a 9 high board. This is one of the hands we discussed. The guy defended. He called my c-bet on a 9 high board. The turn's a 10. I actually hit the 10. And instead of betting it again, I check back so he can bluff on the river. But what he pointed out to me is if you bet this flop and he calls, he probably has a pair. And when you check back the turn, you probably have, a give up. Like you got a Broadway hand, like maybe ace high. You're going to try to show down or something now. So he doesn't need to turn his pair into a bluff. And so every time I took that line, hoping that the guy would turn bottom pair into a bluff, they never did, where my other opponents on ignition would. And I was like, oh, you're right. So I really can't, take these obvious lines with bluff catchers and expect my opponents to turn small pairs into bluffs. So I think I got to be more aggressive in that spot. Just go ahead and bet that turn. And if I put more aggression into my game overall, I'm more likely to get those thin bluff catches with the
lighter calls, right?
Yeah, as opposed to trying to induce this guy to turn that into a bluff, just because I've seen him be aggressive in other hands when he was the pre-flop aggressor. There's a difference between, this guy views me as a nit and him being aggressive towards me when I clearly have a bluff catcher is kind of out of line. But when he's like raising, he's betting, or maybe he's 3-betting. When he's like the aggressor already, yeah, he's going to be more aggressive in those lines, but not when he defends the big blind.
Because he has a capped range, right? Because he's supposed to be 3-betting his best hands pre-flop.
Right.
And since he just called from the big blind, but now that he calls you on the flop, okay, this is making a lot of sense to me. I like this a lot because basically the mistake that you're making, if I can summarize, is that you are trying to induce bluffs from players who don't have incentive to bluff that much.
Exactly. I'm trying to induce bluffs from players who don't have incentive to bluff that much, but also won't over bluff. And the reason I'm doing that is because generally the aggressive players I play against do over bluff.
Right.
They bluff with hands that, they start off, I'm playing the polarized betting range, they're playing the bluff catching range. And then when I kind of check at some point to try to reverse roles, they always take the bait. But these guys know that, the composition of my range still has, once I check, I am going to have a decent amount of air there. So they don't need to turn their pairs into bluffs like the over aggressive players would. So that's one of the big things he pointed out to me. And
that sounds like a game changer, right?
It does. It jives really well with a lot of the theory stuff I've been learning. It just kind of, the more of this stuff you learn, you realize that when you first gather all these pieces, they're all over the place. But then when you understand what the box looks like, And you can then start taking those pieces and kind of putting them exactly where they go. Oh, this is where that fits. It makes sense that if the guy is playing a bluff catching range, there's no need for him to all of a sudden turn into a bluff just because I try to induce him to. And before I thought about it in those terms, I was basically just clicking buttons and playing each hand, on a hand-by-hand basis and not kind of seeing the forest for the trees.
Even a street-by-street basis.
Yeah.
I have an aggressive opponent. There's a difference between an unsophisticated, aggressive opponent on ignition,
right,
who's basically like, he bluffs too much, so let me check to him so he'll bluff, right?
Exactly.
And a selective, aggressive opponent who's actually going to be able to range you and figure out what's going on, and he won't bluff unnecessarily. I think most players, even good ones, don't turn their one pair hands into a bluff very often. So if his most likely holding is one pair, trying to get him to bluff is probably not a winning strategy because he's not going to do it that much, even if he's pretty good.
Yeah. And I was sad about that. I thought for sure he would bluff that hand. If I'm remembering correctly, the player I was up against in this hand was Ryan Dodd, who's a really good player, and he was super aggressive when I played with him. But he was now when I think back to it, he was mostly aggressive when he was opening.
Yeah.
He's opening, he's playing like the more polarized range, and myself or some other opponent at the table is playing the bluff catcher range, then he's going to bet a lot.
Yeah. I really like what you said a moment ago, Carlos, about taking all the different component parts and putting them together to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really what all of us need to do. Like most of us, we can say, I have holes in my game. This is one of my leaks. I tell you straight up, it's ICM for me. I make a lot of ICM mistakes. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's not my strength yet. Right. It's something I need to work on. What I am good at is finding spots to bluff. Where I would normally value bet, I know what my value bets are. I can balance that with the bluffs. I'm good at picking spots that I can bluff because I am known for being aggressive, and if I bluff here, I'm also going to have enough value that I can get called the right amount and folded the right amount. So they have to be, as we like to say, indifferent. Right?
Exactly.
I like to try to make my opponents as indifferent as possible so that they're guessing and so that I can profit in the long run because they're just guessing.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a nutshell, one of the things he told me is do more betting. And do more betting and raising and less checking and calling. Now, that's it's kind of a throwback to when I first started playing poker, because that was obviously the advice that most people get as they move from kind of a amateur status to a professional status, is to ramp up the aggression. And I've done that, but I didn't realize that was kind of creeping back into my game when I was kind of like now it's creeping back in, but I thought I was doing it for the right reasons. Like now I'm not checking out of fear or just natural passivity. I'm trying to induce aggression. But you can't do that in certain situations, even against an aggressive player, unless he's over aggressive. So it's like in these spots where the guy's not over aggressive, continue with your aggression. Do more betting and raising and less checking and calling is the big thing I got from him.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it does show, obviously an elevation of your game, that it used to be Carlos was nitty and scared and didn't want to lose his money. So he didn't want to bet unless he knew he was good, right?
Yeah.
And now it's you're checking for a better reason, but you're maybe at least according to, this guy, Garaf Ganger, whoever he is, you're doing a little too much of that. And that's something you can still do if it makes more sense, but maybe just, the default shouldn't be, let's check to the aggressive opponent, but let's keep if we've taken the lead in the hand already, maybe this is a spot to keep it going.
Yeah. Kind of like what you said about Joseph Chong. In your experience, he's an aggressive player, but he is good enough to have, the ability to change gears at a table where he knows he has two other aggressive players on his left. He doesn't have a style. He adapts to the situation. And that's what Graf is trying to teach me to do, is to adapt to the situation when I'm up against good aggressive opponents, I can't play the same way I do against bad aggressive opponents.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I hardly recognized Joseph Chung from hand number one. It's like he knew who he was playing against. He knew he had the worst seat at the table. You know, all the aggressive players on his left, all the amateurs on his right, and he said, "Forget this. I'm just gonna lock it down from hand number one," which really impressed me because in his shoes, I would have probably taken a few hands of getting like kicked in the head before I'd be like, maybe I should stop trying to win this table like that.
Yeah.
But that's just his experience coming through. He knew he wasn't going to be Joseph Chung yesterday.
Right.
So he had to be somebody else yesterday.
Yeah.
And just because something is your natural style, you still have to be able to knit it up. Like when I play in a satellite, once I get some chips, I stop playing. You know, I'm lock it down.
Yeah.
Unless it's a real spot, But yeah, my normal aggression is obviously designed for winner take all type of sit and goes, like we have here in the satellite room. Like those are winner take all, and I do well in those. I like that style. I'm more aggressive, obviously, in bounty events. And one thing I figured out, I like these shootouts because it kind of fits my style. I want all the chips.
So, do you play many cash games?
I do play cash games.
Yeah. So that same style is kind of great for these shootouts events as well. So
yeah, I mean, you never get all the chips in a cash game because guys keep going into their pockets. So.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's a little bit different.
Can try.
Yeah, you could definitely try, and sooner or later, maybe you get it all. All right. Well, do you have a hand either from your bracelet event or from one of the live events that you played, or any kind of hand at all that we can go through?
I actually do have a hand. So before you came in, I was going over the recording that we did yesterday. So I'll mute this so we don't get the audio. But this is a hand this is a hand from part 2 of the webinar that Garaf and I did yesterday. So
this is a bracelet event. Now, I bet in your shoes it must be really fun to like go back and review hands that you played the day you won your World Series of Poker bracelet. To me, that would be like something I'd want to do anyway, just to reminisce about, what a great day that was.
Yeah, I kind of like, was not being self-aware. I did this same thing with my coach, Ryan LaPlante, where he reviewed, going over the hands, reviewed the hands from the bracelet with me. And I made the comment, I was like, man, it's so fun, like, going, like I'm reliving it. It's like so cool. I said, it's so cool that we get to do this, because he also did the same thing. But what he pointed out to me is it's not as fun when you don't win to relive it. I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, sorry.
And he lost his in the most brutal way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this hand, and I'm not going to remember the details, but he was 3-handed in the 7-7-7-7. So
right.
The big buy-in high roller this summer. And he was 3-handed with what's the guy? David Peters. I don't remember the third guy, but obviously all crushers.
Yeah.
And there's this hand where Ryan has kings, and I think David jams and Ryan calls David has Jack 10 suited and Ryan has kings.
Oh man!
And he loses.
Don't tell me.
Massive all-in hand. It's like it's not good enough that David Peters is one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
He also has to run like God.
You're gonna get lucky
Ryan
too. Come on, man.
Yeah. So Ryan probably enjoyed reviewing the hands of his tournament right up until that point.
Yeah, it's not fun to remember that pain.
Right. For me, I remember, it's fun for me the whole way. But what's funny is I'll play a hand bad, and I'll see myself playing a hand bad, and I'll kind of get re-tilted. I get mostly tilted when I make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So I make a mistake, and then I'm mad about it, and then I think, wait, I won this. I made a mistake, but it turned out okay.
Yeah. Don't worry. We know the ending to this story, exactly. So don't worry. It's going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a hand where I made a potential mistake.
Okay. So what was the buy-in for this again? Was it 500?
888. So
this is the Crazy Eights, right? Okay. The online Crazy Eights, and your opponents were from New Jersey and Nevada.
Yes.
Right? On WSOP.com in the summertime.
Yes.
Of this year, 2021.
Yes, the other summer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
The real
is,
summer.
This is the second summer.
That's it. All right. Cool. So set us up here. What are we looking at?
So at this point, was 20 players left, and I'm in 11th place, and I have around 25 big blinds, like 22 bigs.
Okay.
Actually, no, 27 bigs.
27 big blinds.
Yeah.
The blinds are 10,000, 20,000 with the 20,000 big blind ante that we are in the big blind. So we just paid all that. And we have 540,000 in our stack. So the way I like to look at it, of course, because I'm old school,
Yeah.
our M is about 11, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, or you could say you have 27 big blinds. However you like to look at it, that's the situation. So we're not in great shape, and I'm actually surprised to hear that you're in the middle of the pack and that the average stack is only 20-some big blinds. So I guess that's how that tournament was structured.
Yes. So the hand starts with cutoff opening. He has me covered, I believe. Yeah. So cutoff has me slightly covered. I don't know this player. I generally do color codes for everyone at the table that I have information on. So this was like, a guy that I hadn't played much against. And also I didn't find much when I searched his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like readless here.
So
But when I don't recognize a player, I assume they're probably not good.
Okay.
So
okay, that's usually the correct assumption, to be honest. So we are at an 8-handed table in the big blind, holding the 6 of clubs, 5 of clubs, so 6-5 suited, and the cutoff unknown player who has us covered by about 20% or so opens to just over the min raise. It's 10-20. He makes it 45. I don't know, 6-5 suited, I'm not folding.
right.
If we 3-bet, we're going to be pretty close to pot commitment. I don't see any reason not to just call and see a flop.
Agreed. So that's what I decided to do. I call, and we get an okay flop. 9 of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, deuce of clubs. So I flop a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. But more importantly, this board should miss a lot of my opponent's opening range.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's 3 relatively low cards, no picture cards, no ace. And so, yeah, this is a better flop for our range overall than it is for our opponents. But does he know that?
Right. That's always the question. Now, I do think he still has range advantage on this board because he has all the overpairs I don't. But the equities run a lot closer on these sort of boards than, some of the boards that are like more clearly in the opener's range.
Yeah, of course. When he doesn't have aces, kings, queens, he could still have us beat with, we have 6 high, but he can have a strong hand here if he has ace 9. He certainly would have opened ace 9 from the cutoff. So it's not like he never hits this board, but I prefer to see those lower cards instead of those picture cards just because that's more in our wheelhouse than his overall.
Right. I definitely have more 2-pair than this guy.
Yeah.
Sets. Honestly, what will I do with 9s pre-flop here? I might get 9. So he's opening from the cutoff. Yeah, I'm 3-betting 9s.
Yeah, we're trying to get it in with 9s. We have 27 big blinds. We're not trying to see a flop with 9s.
Exactly. So although I have the advantage in terms of 2-pair, he has the advantage in terms of sets and overpairs.
Yeah, we do have deuces, right? We could have a set of deuces.
Yes. So I think we both have deuces. Maybe we both have 7s.
Yeah, 7s is close. I don't know if I want to get 27 big blinds in with 20 players left.
Yeah.
With just pocket 7s, but 9's a little too strong, so that's right around the cutoff. So either way.
So I have 2 of the sets, and he has 3 of them.
Yeah.
So a little bit of an advantage.
Usually nobody has a set anyway. So.
True. But we're
range.
At the nut portion of the
range,
which is a small portion of it, and a lot of people forget that out of fear. You immediately think that you see the monsters under the bed. That's not the case here. That generally is an indication of sizing. Whoever has the nut advantage is usually allowed to use bigger sizing, but whether or not you bet or not is more so about range advantage. And I think the overall, or as Andrew would say, equity advantage, the equities run close enough to where he has a slight advantage, but not a big advantage.
Right.
So he can't just c-bet 100% of range on this board.
Yeah, and when you say Andrew, you're talking, of course, about Andrew Brokus. And if you read his books, Play Optimal Poker, Volume 1 and 2, he constantly talks about this exact situation, a late position open and a big blind call, and we're trying to figure out, using solvers and, whether we have a condensed range or a polarized range and all of that. These are the kinds of hands that those books just hammer home, because this is probably 90% of poker is understanding who has the advantage, right?
Yes. Equity is definitely the driving factor, and knowing who has the equity advantage just gets you, it's like 80% of the job. Just understanding who has the advantage and what, how your strategy should change based on that.
Okay. So we're going to check here, right? I mean, we don't really have a leading range.
No, not on this board. I think there's some boards that are similar to this one where maybe we do have a slight equity advantage. Like, for example, let's say that deuce was an 8 or a 6. Now, not only do I have more 2 pairs, I have more straights because he's probably not opening like 6-5 off, where I'm definitely defending that. So when all 3 cards are, I don't know if I want to use the word, I'm going to say medium.
Okay.
Because you don't want to go too small, because if you're thinking like 5-4-3, now the board interacts with all the aces in his range. So he does have some straights on those sort of boards. But boards like 7-6-5, that sort of board, the big blind could often have the range advantage if the opener's range is overly strong in terms of Broadway hands and just generally hands that don't connect with, I'm going to say, the bigger small boards.
Right.
I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah, medium boards.
Yeah.
So, but even in that case, Carlos, are you making a big mistake if you literally never lead?
Good question. No. Having a leading range is optimal there, but it earns you so little in equity that if you're not a supercomputer, for those of you listening to this who are not supercomputers, you maybe want to just pass on that, because if you try to implement this and you do it wrong, which I've done in the past, maybe on this podcast, you tend to do more harm than good.
Got it.
So it's not worth it. And Andrew has kind of given me permission to not try to play exactly like the solver, because it's not possible.
Right. And the solver is going to do it just enough to have that leading range with a perfect balance and everything else. But typically in heads up pots, if you're out of position, you can go ahead and check on the flop regardless.
Just put the game on easy mode. Yeah. Why make it more difficult for yourself?
Especially when you're not earning that much by doing so.
Exactly.
All right. So we check.
I check to the guy, and he ends up betting half pot here. Okay, the video is not going, but that's okay. I'll remember what happens.
Okay, so the pot is 120,000, and our opponent's going to fire 64K into 120K, and we've got a lot going on. We've got our gut shot, our backdoor club draw. So we've got some potential here. You could probably make some money raising, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The problem is you're going to have to lose your equity if he 3 bets.
Which is not a major problem, because my equity isn't like amazing.
That's true. It's not that much to begin with.
Yeah, it's just a gut shot with 2 unders to second pair and the backdoor flush draw, and it's not like a big backdoor flush draw. So if I have to raise fold here, it's not a big deal. Discussing this with Garaf, one of the things that he pointed out is that it's pretty much a must raise if the guy bets smaller.
Yeah.
But he kind of bets a size that really isn't a thing in GTO land on this board. Generally, you should be betting more like 1/3 or 2/3, somewhere in that ballpark. So when the guy goes half, in his mind, he tends to read a little bit more strength into that, or he's like a little bit uncertain.
Okay, so we're a little bit confused by the sizing, especially given stacks.
Yeah.
Because now he's betting about, 13% of our stack here on the flop. So, then when you start thinking about raising, that you're going to end up putting in 30% of your stack. And I hate putting in 30% of my stack if I know I have to fold after doing that. I mean, even though we only have 6 high and whatever equity we have, what I'm looking to do here, if I raise, and I agree actually, I think that's a great point about the sizing. So if he makes it a third of the pot, like 40K, and then we can raise small to like 100K, and then if we pick up equity on the turn, like with a club or a pair, and then we can start, getting more chips in and trying to, bluff this guy out of the pot, because we still have enough chips behind to actually do that. But because it's sizing what it is, if we raise and he calls, the pot is now too big. So even if we do pick up equity on the turn, it's going to be hard to get him to fold when he has something like even middle pair, like ace-7, I think, because he'll be getting better pot odds, right?
Exactly. So his sizing has kind of like, taken away some of my options.
Yeah.
But I do think my hand is still too good to fold. So that leaves calling.
All right. So we're going to call. I don't know. It's dubious to me calling here, but you're right. A lot of good cards can happen on the turn. Yeah. So let's see if one of them comes off.
Yeah. So we call, and on the turn we see a 3. I believe it was the 3 of hearts.
Okay. So this is a good card for us.
Yeah. Because now we pick up the double gutter.
We have 2 gut shots. We now have about a little less than twice the pot in our stack. The pot is now 248, and we have 432. Our opponent still has almost 600. So do we do the old check call lead here? I feel like I want to lead this card. What do you think?
What size?
I mean, if I lead, I'm polarizing my range if I lead, right? So I would go bigger. I mean, maybe half my stack. And then you just have to call if he shoves. But he's not going to shove very often.
Right. That's actually what I did. I went for the lead here, but one of the things that Garaf pointed out to me is that this isn't a card that we can lead on in theory, because this card is pretty much a blank. It doesn't change the equities like, a card like a 6 or a 5.
Nothing actually got there.
Right.
Nothing actually got there. So he would have had to have already been there.
Exactly.
Or picked up, like 7 tray got there, right?
Yeah,
Some weird 2 pair from the big blind got there. But generally, nothing got there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great point, too.
Yeah, so like, or even like a diamond. If a diamond hits.
Yeah, then the flush got there.
That's another, type of card we can lead on. But, I'm from the Clayton Fletcher School of Street Poker. And I also decided to lead here because I think although this card doesn't change the equities, what also doesn't change here is that my opponent still has tons of broadways and ace highs in his range that are air on this turn card.
But they're beating us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what also doesn't change is that I have more of the 2 pair, not only the 2 pair, but also like 1 pair hands that would like some protection here. Like say a 7-5 is a hand that I probably would hesitate to call a second barrel with. And so, but it's still the best hand very often. So instead of going for what you mentioned, the big bet, I actually went for around a third pot here, maybe even, around a third pot, more as a protection bet.
Yeah, and I don't mind it because you still should be able to get some folds out of those, like, unpaired hands like king, queen or something. Like they should fold when you lead a lot, even though they're getting, almost 5-1. And that's about what they need if their outs are live, right?
Exactly.
But how can they be sure that they're not drawing dead like you have a set of deuces, right?
Right.
So it's probably a fine sizing, and it also gives you more wiggle room for the river.
Yeah. So one thing that Garaf pointed out to me, he said, all that's fine if you are doing this as an exploit against an opponent who's not capable of attacking it. Because he says, if you try this against me, I'm raising you with any 2 cards.
Because nothing got there.
Exactly, because you're not repping anything.
But he's not raising me with any 2 cards because I bet big. So that's another advantage of putting in the bigger bet. Like, he really can't raise me unless he wants to shove, which maybe he does. but sometimes he's going to be up against it, right? And I'm not folding.
Right. That's a really good point. So maybe the bigger bet size does a better job of polarizing you to prevent, good aggressive players from
exploiting you and owning you.
Exactly. But to my credit, I will say this is not a line I would take against that player type. If we go back to the beginning of this conversation, I mentioned that this was an opponent that I didn't know. Right. And if I don't know the guy, I'm assuming that they are vulnerable in this spot. Another reason they're vulnerable, remember, I'm targeting all these Broadway hands and ace highs here. And the reason I can even target those is because this player makes the mistake, I'm assuming, of c-betting all those on this type of board where he doesn't get to c-bet everything. He's supposed to have some checkbacks either as just straight up give ups or, just some occasional slow plays to kind of balance that out. But like on a 9-7 deuce board with a two-tone board, he can't just c-bet range, especially not, with that size he chose. So I'm kind of exploiting the fact that I'm assuming he's over c-betting, and that means he's got a lot of air in his range still on his turn. And I'm basically just targeting the air because I don't think he's good enough or aggressive enough to raise the air as a bluff.
Right, but Garaf is, but luckily that's not our opponent in this hand, so that's why I do actually like your sizing overall. Yeah. So I don't think this is a mistake, but one advantage to the bigger bet is you don't have to worry about an unknown opponent like having this skill that you didn't expect him to have or something.
Yeah. So I think my line in this hand. By the way, villain folded to my small bet on the turn, so he probably just had like king queen or something like that.
Yeah, and those are the hands we're targeting, right? Exactly. I mean, that's what we're trying to fold out with this little bet. But the idea that I don't know, like if I'm in position here and I realize that trade didn't really change anything, and that Carlos only bet like actually less than 1/3 of the pot, I might just say, you know what? I don't believe him. I'm all in.
Yeah. So it's a danger against those player types, which I'm generally playing against that type of player.
Sure.
And I did a good job in this tournament, or at least in this hand, of using my old ignition tricks on a guy who's probably kind of like me, an ignition reg who's kind of like wandered into a WSOP event. But if I tried this against, an actual WSOP reg, like Ryan Dodd is at the table on the button, and he would have, I feel like he would have jammed on me in this spot.
Yeah.
But I would not have taken this line against him.
Right.
So I'm doing a good job, like Joseph Chong, of, changing gears, and I'm picking my spots.
Based on your opponents and your seat at the table and your position in the tournament and all the millions of other factors that we have to consider.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is a good hand. I don't really see any mistakes. I like this little bet, especially given your logic of trying to fold out hands like king, queen, queen, jack, stuff, whatever he might have that has no pair, no draw, no nothing. I like it. The check call lead is one of my favorite plays, actually. But with an M of 10 or 11, it's not really a big part of my overall strategy, just because you're starting to get too many chips in, and I hate to have to fold. Like if you make this bet and he does shove, now you have to fold 2 gut shots because you're priced out, which really hurts. Right. You got 8 outs. Yeah. We think at least, maybe at least you might have a little bit less overall. Like you could have, some of your outs might not be live, I guess, but I think they all will be most of the time.
So what I'm thinking here in hindsight is that a better line in this hand is to check call turn. That way I definitely realize my equity. And then also, if I check call turn and a diamond hits, I can like lead jam.
Yeah, you could. You can't check call every sizing on the turn, though. That's the problem. Some turn bets are going to be too big. Like if he pots it on the turn, you just have to fold.
Right, but here's the thing. The other thing is that because this card doesn't change much of the equities, I wouldn't expect him to pot this on, or honestly, I wouldn't expect him to bet at all with this turn, with a hand like king queen on this turn card. So a lot of times what happens here is it goes check, and then I can bluff those same hands on the river, if they break out.
Yeah, if you think that most of his checkbacks are hands like king, queen, you can bet every river.
Yeah.
And probably take it down a lot.
Exactly. I think, these player types tend to oversee bet on these sort of boards with those sort of hands, and they don't tend to double barrel often enough, especially like this 3's not a scare card. When he bets the flop and I call, it feels like I have a 9-7 or a deuce. And this 3 is only an overcard to, a third of that range. So I don't expect him to barrel turn as a bluff very often unless he has a draw himself. I think if the hand just plays a lot more cleanly if turn goes check and then I can bluff river, or if he bets a small enough sizing, I can call obviously with my 8 outs, but additionally I can rep the flush a lot better than he can if it comes in. So you can also count some of those as like bluff outs. So I think that gives me enough equity to make a call on the turn, as opposed to either choosing this size, which kind of opens me up to aggressive players like you, or doing your line, which is the bigger bet on the turn. I think the only issue with that is what we started with, is that it's not kind of in flow with theory because that turn card doesn't change.
Doesn't change anything.
But your line makes a lot of sense on a card that does, like a diamond or like a 4 or an 8, something like that.
Man, I love talking poker with you.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited. Let's go downstairs and play some cards, man. We're at the Rio. It's all happening right now downstairs. There's seniors down there, man. Let's go play some seniors.
I cannot wait to get into the senior events. in fact, so I've been railing my friends playing them, and I was trying to get some information for them. So I asked Kev Math a question about the senior event, and one of my followers on Twitter says, aren't you a few years off before you can play that? And I responded with, no, I aged 10 years in this 30K downswing that I've been in the past couple of months. So I think I've aged rapidly, that although I'm not 50, I feel like I'm 60 in poker years. Since the bracelet, has been kind of rough. Yeah.
Listen, I know people that lost 30K on the flip and go. It's all relative. You know what I mean?
It's all relative. And the cool thing about it is that now that I have a bigger bankroll, 30K sounds like a big number, but it's actually a small number of buy-ins because I'm playing bigger.
You're playing bigger tournaments.
So it's not really affecting my game much. But just as a joke, I said I aged.
Yeah, that's great.
Any excuse to get me in a senior event.
I know. Yeah, poker players be the only ones like making fake IDs to say they're older than they are.
Yeah. I cannot wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we go, are you doing coaching? What's going on with you? Where can people find you and your work? Man, you have improved more at poker than anybody I know, and I know that it started with TPE, and obviously you do your thing with Andrew Brokus and everything. But man, I'm so proud of you. I can't even tell you how proud of you I am.
Thank you, man. I also want to give a shout out GTO Check, which is a piece of software. It's a solver.
Is that Dominic's thing? No, that's something else.
No, that's DTO.
DTO.
Yeah,
okay,
but DTO as well. Like, these are things I've used to kind of like see that big picture box I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And now I know how to plug in all these things Andrew's been teaching me over the past decade. Like, I can see it all now. So it's starting to make more sense to me. I got to refresh my memory on all that stuff because I learn it, but I don't really get to use it until this time of year.
Because you're always bum hunting.
I'm always bum hunting. and the beauty is there's like the 1K tournaments on Ignition are full of bombs, which is amazing. And it makes me wonder, like, why the hell am I wasting my time playing against, like,
trying to beat people that know what they're doing?
These guys. Yeah. So there's that. But before I get into the plugs, I want to give a shout out to your friend, my acquaintance, and hopefully my future friend, Jeff Platt, on his deep run in the double stack event. I was able to rail him.
He played great.
He did. His 4th place finish. And I was really impressed with, so he's sitting at the table, he busts in a spot where he gets unlucky. And, within the next 10 minutes, he's like sideline reporting for the tournament. He just busted. So super professional. Get a chance to see all that broadcasting stuff from behind the scenes was really cool. And he and I met online during my bracelet event because he did a commentary for the leading up to it. But this was my first time meeting him in person, so that was really fun to see him, and his family was there railing him. So
some things never change. Carlos has always been a poker fan and someone that can really get a lot of joy out of watching somebody play and rooting. I remember when I was deep in the main and you were there, I don't know why, but it means so much, and just having people like, because it's such a solo project, like feeling like people are on your side, man. It's really great.
Yeah, and Jeff's such an easy guy to root for, man. So I was really, I was bummed for him that he didn't win the tournament, but I was pretty happy that he got a nice amount of puppet child money for Buddy there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, my mother is retired from poker, as you know, and she loves Jeff Platt. Like he's like such a prom date, like the guy you can bring home to mom. Everybody loves Jeff, and it's great to see good people do big things.
He even dressed the part of a prom date. Even in the bracelet events, he's got his nice blazer and everything.
Always classy. Yeah. So shout out to Jeff Platt. And now let people know where they can find you.
Okay, so primarily you can find me on Twitter pretty much all day, every day. My handle is Hip Hop 101 Trivia. If you go to my bio or profile page on Twitter, you can find all my links for coaching and all the products and stuff I have. There's going to be an upcoming TPE video series where Andrew Brokus reviewing my bracelet event run the same way that Giraffe just did. I did the same thing with Ryan LaPlante for Learn Pro Poker. And then probably, I'm guessing around the top of the year, myself and another TPE pro and friend, Alex Fitzgerald, are going to, we're going to create a product where we take the advice from those three coaches who reviewed my tournament and basically kind of consolidate it. So you can see like, in this 6-5 hand where Carlos screwed it up by leading turn on a card that doesn't change the equities. What are Giraffe's thoughts on this spot, and Andrew's thought on this spot, and also Ryan's thought, and then also Alex. So you can kind of I'm just going to pit all the coaches against each other and have a death match and see who comes out on top.
I love it. There was a book years ago called Winning Poker Tournaments One Hand at a Time.
Yes.
Where it was that was a different book. But this book was probably around that same time though as Gus wrote his book, where it was online players, John Turner, Ape Styles. Yeah. Maybe, I forget who, I think there were three. And the third may actually have been the aforementioned Ruthless, Adam Levy. I'm not sure, though. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, it was like three of the original OG, online killers. Pearl Jammer, these guys that, all of us hated to see at our table on Party Poker circa 2003. Okay, I'm talking back in the day. Well, they did the same thing. Here's a hand, and each player explained what he would do and why.
Right.
And so they would differ sometimes, but you would get the different perspectives of three different players who had three different approaches to the game. And I found that book immensely helpful. And having people analyze your hands, I mean, if you weren't a narcissist before, having three of the best in the game, Andrew, Ryan, all these guys, and Alex, everybody's going to be talking about you and everything you did. I mean, this has got to be great for the ego. It's let's all review once again how I got my bracelet.
As a fan of poker and a fan of these guys, that's a big deal for me. And also, this will be one of the few products I've done where I was not the expert. I feel good coming into this as a student, because I am a student at heart.
Of course.
And, having all these guys, tell me what I need to do. That's how I got this far. These guys are the ones who basically gave me the tools that helped me win the bracelet in the first place. So to kind of have them, they've already fixed the leak. Now they just got to come in with some caulk and, they're just fixing they're tweaking. If you think about a mechanic, they put the engine in, but then maybe something wasn't right. They got to come in and twist it a little bit. So that part, I'm looking forward to them just solidifying my game even more. And then, hell, maybe I'll win another bracelet and we can do it again.
I'll tell you something. One thing you and Jeff Platt have in common, you guys are both really easy to root for.
Yeah.
And I'm rooting for you all day, every day, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
I appreciate that, man. I didn't stand you up. or anything. It's great.
Yeah, that's not 3 weeks in a row that somebody just dissed me. So thanks for breaking that streak.
Yeah. So you can always, Clayton and TP Nation, you can always depend on Carlos.
Absolutely. Well, for Carlos Welch and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanna hold them like they do in Texas plays. Fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart.